If I die, you have my permission to eat me. Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by. This time I'm coming at you for my, continuing series of, it's not a very long series, maybe a title here or there or whatever. A lot of times towards the end of the winter when I resume my movie reviews for the year, I tend to, if I can think of any, I tend to like to review to start off my review season because it's like the end of winter still. I like to tend to review like winter against the elements movies or whatever. And you think I would have got to this one a lot sooner than I did. It was a kind of a title that I forgot about. This is probably one of the titles that might be one of the very first like winter survival stories. A lot of these kind of things have come out since this movie came out. I'm coming at you to review the 1993 film by the name of Alive. This movie was a big title when I was in high school, and I want to say they even had us watch it for some fucking reason. I don't even know what class that would have been. Cannibalism class. I don't know what class. I don't think we had a survival class because they generally don't give you any classes that benefit you in any way in life. So I don't know what the hell class we would have even watched this in, but I guess it beats having a teacher blab on to you about nothing or having you read books about jack shit. Let's watch a movie about jack shit. So that's what we did. I'm pretty sure, as I said, we watched this in a high school class or whatever. I don't think I was particularly cared much about it. I guess I'd rather watch a movie in school than do schoolwork or whatever. So I guess I was okay with it. But I remember feeling like just like, oh, not too impressed with it or whatever. And it's funny because I've never owned this movie or anything like that, and it's very possible that I haven't even seen it since watching it in high school. Maybe the only time I ever saw it was watching it in high school. I've since recently come across this 30th anniversary edition DVD of it for a relatively decent price, and I'm like, you know what, this is something that I haven't seen forever, maybe almost 30 years I haven't seen it for or whatever. And it's kind of one of these, I'm kind of a fan of these, cold weather survivalist movies. I like to watch them. It's nice to have these things to watch during the winter and stuff. And things like Arctic or the Arctic or whatever have done, the same kind of thing recently. And The Grey, I've actually reviewed The Grey on this channel several years ago, and I actually really liked The Grey and prefer that to this. The Grey is basically a rip-off of this movie, more or less. I just watched Alive for the first time in probably, several decades since I've seen it originally for the first time today. And I feel very similar about it. It's about this purported true story of in 1972, this rugby team flying over this, this very cold mountainous region, and for whatever reason, they don't even really explain why. They end up crashing, and it was just like their frickin', I don't know, was it 70 days, 60, 70 days of, surviving and staying alive, if you will, in this, this frigid mountain winter wasteland, if you will. And having see, it's almost like, and it even has a character from Dead Poet Society in it. It's almost like Dead Poet Society crashes in the mountains, kind of a thing. It has that same cookie cutter like sentimentality to it. And I don't know, it's one of these movies that it was really hyped at the time. And I remember, probably when we were going to watch it in class or whatever, everyone talking about, oh, this is the movie where there's a scene where they eat people. And it was just like a big, how things are just hyped up and overhyped and all this and that. I remember being like a teenager, and it's just like, oh, this is a scene where there's like they eat people to survive, and it's just like so taboo, this movie and all this and that. And having rewatched it now, or having seen it again for the first time in probably close to 30 years or whatever, I I don't. I guess the reason I prefer The Grey more is because it's not as big of a group of people. I guess, I don't know, there's just something about this movie starting off with such a huge group of people and having so many of them writhing in pain and this and that after the crash. And I don't know, I guess to the movie's credit, maybe the thing that made me uncomfortable watching it was just, the big group of people in agony and writhing, and lots of people dying and, throughout the course of the movie just dying off and writhing in pain and all this and that. So I guess to the movie's credit, it does that to an extent where it actually, I mean, that's something I don't really like about the movie, and I guess, as I said, that's something that the movie, I guess, accomplishes, or if you want to say that, to make the viewer uncomfortable. This isn't the kind of a movie that you really need to own. Of course, now I own it or whatever. It's not something that you necessarily watch very often because it's just so goddamn depressing, So, they crash, and it's just, I found the moments after they crash and stuff with all of the writhing and agony and all this and that really just annoying. And I guess you have to do it. If you're making a movie like this, you have to portray it, and I can't fault the filmmakers for portraying it. It's just personally, it's just a little too much, melodrama or drama or writhing and pain and agony and all this and that. Not exactly what you'd call pleasant to watch or whatever. So the premise of the, it's 2 hours long, and as I was watching it 30 minutes into it, I'm like, oh my God, what are they gonna do for another hour and a half? And I do kind of feel like it's maybe a little too long or whatever. And so that's the premise of this movie. It's just 2 hours of the crash happens really early on in the movie, and like maybe 8 or 10 minutes into the movie, and the rest of the movie is just them surviving or whatever. And I guess I can't really fault the movie. I'll just maybe say that maybe this thing isn't really my cup of tea, and it never really has been. And once again, I think the thing that really rubs me the wrong way is just all of the, and once again, it's realistic, but I guess the way it's just done in the movie or whatever, just all of the characters just being, and I can't fault them for being whiny and writhing in pain and miserable and uncomfortable and stuff like that. I guess the reason I like The Grey so much more is because it's the same premise, but it's scaled down in the sense of the ensemble cast or whatever is a much smaller group of people. So I guess you don't have so much, so many victims and stuff writhing and dying and all this kind of stuff. So it's a little less annoying in those regards. And I think in the Grey, I mean, it seems like they're not spending the whole movie in the plane wreckage. Basically this whole movie is just spent in the plane wreckage and this and that, and it's just like, it gets kind of old. I mean, with all of the characters, the one thing about having a bigger cast and a group of victims, if you will, is that, I mean, I guess it does make watching it a little more, I guess you could say because you have a bigger cast, maybe you have more stuff to keep the viewer interested for a longer period of time. But that's my problem with it. I feel like it's maybe a half hour longer than it needs to be or whatever. And, just seeing these people slowly die over time is just kind of annoying. And then the thing I was watching it, when the hell does it happen? Like sometime in the second hour, I think it happens. Maybe 90 minutes into the movie or something, like the avalanche scene, and I was just rolling my eyes. I was like, oh my God, haven't us viewers and the characters in the movie been through enough peril where, now you're gonna, throw this avalanche and kill, I don't know how many people died in the avalanche that, slid down the mountain and, filled the plane wreckage with snow and buried people in their little plane wreckage shelter. And that was a scene that I could have just as well done without. Like, if I did a Nate cut of this, I think that scene would just be gone. What's so funny is, a lot of characters would disappear between the scene before it and the scene after they're dug out or whatever, but you could just say, oh, they died or whatever. You could put a looped line in there that's just like, too bad those other people died over the night. I wonder what happened. But yeah, I feel like at that point in the movie, you've already been through so much suffering and loss and this and that the avalanche scene was, just watching it just recently, or not just, well, I guess recently, today is recently, but just watching it today, I just got done watching it, it's just like, oh God, like, as a viewer, it's just like, I didn't need to see that more of a whatever. And, one of the big premises of this movie is, they've got a radio, and of course you can't make the radio work without the batteries that are in the tail section, which are, the tail section hit the mountain and broke off before they crashed. So a big premise of this movie is trying to find a way to get enough energy and, strength and stuff to keep warm to go on the trek for the battery. and that's what leads the characters to, like, you know, start to cannibalize or eat people, eat dead people or whatever, and because they're like, you know, we're so weak and stuff, we can't, in this such a high altitude with the low oxygen and stuff, we can't frickin' do all this traversing with like no food, and so we got to start eating dead people. And you know, I don't fault them for that. I mean, you know, I will say once again, to the movie's credit, that scene definitely pulls at the whatever heartstrings. Maybe that's the wrong word. It tugs at the guts or whatever. We'll just say tugs at the guts or pulls on the gut strings or something like that. The whole, you know, eating of the, you know, the dead people scene. I mean, you know, that definitely, to the movie's credit, even to a seasoned professional horror movie viewer like myself, it's just like, yeah, I can only imagine what the average, you know, moviegoer, you know, how they reacted or felt to that scene. Probably people puking in the aisles or whatever. But so that, you know, I don't really have anything terribly negative to say about the cannibalism scene or whatever. I mean, it's just, it does what it does, and it, you know, it's quote unquote realistic or whatever. But you know, through eating, you know, dead people and stuff, they're able to get the strength. And also waiting until, you know, a warmer time of year, they're able to get the strength to go on the trek for the tail. And I think they end up finding the tail and the battery, but I think they're unable to, like, it's so heavy, they're unable to bring the battery back, and so they bring a guy with the radio to it. And I don't think they ever get the radio to work, which is, I guess, at least realistic. I mean, if it'd been one of those movies where it's like, okay, we've got this goal, let's go achieve it, and then the movie's over, it just would have been so lame. So once again, to the movie's credit, I think that the fact that, you know, that the goal was to, you know, go get the battery and make the radio work, and that was a goal for such a big part of the movie, and only to have it not work, I think was at least realistic. So I'll give the movie plus for that. What characters doing, like Ethan Hawke and this other guy or whatever, they end up just basically walking to get help, which is a little, you know, like I say, this is a purported true story or whatever. You can, you know, take that with a grain of salt, or, you know, believe it or not believe it if you want to or whatever, but seems kind of far-fetched, but I guess I'll just leave it at that. So I guess that's pretty much the premise of the movie. They try to, you know, they find the tail section, they try to make the, you know, radio work with the battery, it doesn't work, and then they just end up walking on. Ethan Hawke character is just like, let's just keep walking until we find help. So I guess that's what ends up happening, and they call some helicopters to rescue the rest of them at the wreckage and stuff. So all's well that ends well. I don't know how many people were supposed to have survived or how many people were supposed to have died or whatever, but 2 hours later it's like finally over. And like I say, cut at least, you know, 20-30 minutes out of this movie. It would have been a much more, I don't know, easier to get through. But I mean, on one hand you can say, well, the point of this movie isn't to be easy to get through. The point of a movie like this is to make it harrowing and make it difficult for the viewer to get through, because it's difficult for the characters to get through. Yeah, I hear you, but Jesus Christ, it's already, you know, it'd be a difficult enough movie at like 90 minutes long. The extra half hour, I think, is just a little, maybe too grueling for the paying viewer or whatever, but I don't regret, you know, buying it. I think it's about time to have this movie in my collection. How often will I watch it? Probably not very often. Like I said, rather, I mean, I definitely prefer The Grey, which is kind of an alive ripoff, if you will, but I think with the reduced cast and stuff like that of that movie, and it just, I don't know, there's other elements. I haven't seen that movie for a while, but I know there's other elements of The Grey that, you know, I appreciate and like more than elements that are in this movie. I can go as high as 2 stars out of 4 stars for Alive. Like I say, it's maybe 20-30 minutes too long, but that's just my opinion. So there you go. That's Nate's take on the movie Alive, and you know, I guess you can't say it doesn't achieve what it sets out to achieve. I just wonder, you know, if people, like, I would imagine this movie is a lot of people's favorite movie, and, you know, like how I watch Friday the 13th, or, you know, certain movies over and over and over. It just seems like it'd be so hard to have this be like your favorite movie and watch it over and over and over. I mean, amazingly, somehow they managed to, like, slip quote unquote humor in there, and it's just kind of like, yeah, I don't know if I feel like I even should be laughing in this, watching this movie, and it's just kind of a weird movie. But like I say, to its credit, I guess it achieves, you know, basically most or not, if not close to all of what it sets out to achieve. It's just a little grueling and maybe a little long in my personal opinion. So I guess that does it for my review of this movie. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, we'll catch you on the next video.